All right, everyone, as we close out the month of October, it is currently the 31st. It's Halloween, the last day of the month, and we are rounding out the year. We just, this is the day of the first of the big three, Halloween, followed by Thanksgiving and Christmas. Now, I know this time of year is rough for a lot of people, whether it be the loss of family members, friends, with the way the world is going right now in the economy. A lot of people, lost their jobs or, cut back hours or not making as much money as you did just a few months ago. Long story short, times are tough. And this video is just a friendly reminder about God's provision, considering the fact that it has been in the media for the last couple weeks, specifically in the midst of this government shutdown, that those, receiving SNAP benefits like food stamps and whatnot are about to go through a very rough time because if I remember correctly, with the first of the month being tomorrow, which is a Saturday, that means typically people, food stamps, Social Security recipients receive their benefits, the day before the weekend, if the first falls on a weekend. And typically, this is a time of the month when a lot of people, get their food and whatnot because they got their benefits. However, a lot of people will not have those benefits. So, yeah, for this to be occurring in the midst of the holiday season is a rough patch. But this is just a video where I wanted to, talk about some scriptures about God's provision. I mean, need I remind you of Genesis chapter 22, verse 14? Abraham named the place where he was supposed to sacrifice his son, the Lord will provide, because guess what? God, what? He put a ram in the bush. And I think for me, when I thought about this topic, the first thing that came to mind was, of course, the New Testament when Jesus was speaking to the multitudes, and what? He fed them. What was it, like 5,000, if not more people, with 2 fish and 5 loaves of bread. He made a way. And also, you think about the Israelites traveling through the desert, and God provided with the manna from heaven, and if I remember correctly, the birds for meat. And then he even told Moses to strike the rock, and he provided water from it. So just remember, in times like this, when it seems like there's no way of making it out your current rut because, the powers that be have cut you off, God's going to provide in some way, shape, or form. I mean, my circumstances are different because I've never been on those benefits, but I know family members and friends who are on SNAP or receive food stamps. It's just one of those things like, look, self-employed, single, not married, no kids. I kind of fit into a gray area where it's like, hey, you would be able to earn this stuff, but you don't qualify for this, that, and the third. And I'm like, whatever. So I have to pay for everything. But I know from my own experience that God provides when you least expect it, because things have been wonky with YouTube for a little while where I'm still able to make money, but there's been a decline in views and whatnot. And that's because the platform has been shaking up, and I'm trying to maneuver or properly pivot in order to get my views up to maintain, just a little boost to put money away for savings and whatnot. But sometimes that's the thing about what I do. It's the fact that if my numbers aren't up, I freak out, because sometimes I'm like, oh my gosh, have I fallen off? Is my channel done for? Do I need to start looking at different content to review? Or am I on the verge of like, it's been a good 8 years, but is my time up? Will I have to go back into the working world? But then by the middle of the month, or sometimes the last week, sometimes the last couple of days, I'll see my analytics go through the roof, and I'm like, oh wow, okay. It's just one of those things where Sometimes you're up, sometimes you're down. Some months my ad revenue is overflowing. Other months it's a little low. But that's what I have my eBay store for, to balance it out. And I have more than one channel. But it's just one of those things where sometimes the most important lessons are the easiest, simple ones, yet you tend to forget them. Because in times where it seems like you have no way out of your current predicament, or it's like, God, my deadline's approaching, how am I going to get this money to pay my bills? Or I have kids to feed and our, cabinets are looking empty. And then at that 11th hour, God just swoops in. I remember when I was a kid, I even thought about this because I would speak in church and whatnot. And I think I did a speech one time about, is he an on-time God or a last-second savior? Because of the fact that, everything is based on God's timing, not man's timing. And it just amazed me at a young age to realize how God just steps in when you least expect it. I mean, not just when you least expect it, but when you need him to the most, where it's like, God, come on. I mean, if you figure out a way for me to get this money or this food or whatever the case may be, I'm going to be good. And then you're dreading, but sometimes it's like God, I used to think like God must like to watch, his people sweat. And then he just comes in at that last minute with the answer or the solution or the resources. And in times like this where you're struggling, not that it's much of any consolation, but everybody's struggling right now. And it's not always financially. Sometimes it's just based on resources. And the worst thing you could do at a time like this is to be running low on your spiritual resource. So I know this might seem fruitless, but trust and believe it. I'm guilty of not reading my Bible as much as I should. And by read, I mean like, not from, cover to cover, but sometimes it helps to just pull it out. Or your phone, the Bible app, whatever you want to, do. But just let God guide you to a book or a set of verses. And I'm not saying you need to read like 7 chapters, but sometimes Psalms has been very, very good. The fact that, there are so many of them, and if you just randomly pick one, more often than not, God leads you to what you need to hear. There have been so many times where just picking up my Bible and reading a few verses and then whispering a prayer to God, it will change everything. Because sometimes the answers that you seek will just be provided after you take a moment to reflect. Because one thing is for sure, panicking and worrying does nothing. Because if you have time to do that, you have time to think of a plan, So I just say the best thing you could do is just take a moment, reflect, pray, and just listen, because sometimes God will tell you the answers to your questions or provide solutions to your problems after you just take a moment to be still. Don't pay attention to everything moving around you. And hey, get off social media for that moment where you need to just listen for God and talk to God. Get off the phone, get off the computer, just listen. Trust and believe, because with all the tense stuff and negativity swirling around whenever you open an app or get online, don't pay attention to that. Pay attention to God. Something is going to happen in your favor. So, with that being said, folks, I want to leave you with this last verse. And that's Isaiah 58:11. The Lord will guide you always. He will satisfy your needs in a sun-scorched land. So I pray everybody has a great weekend. And just remember, God provides. He does.